Listen close, because this is where the line between performance and reality gets smashed, where microphones stopped being props and turned into weapons, where the crowd didn't know whether to cheer, gasp, or stay silent. WWE is scripted, everyone knows that, but history has proven again and again that when emotions boil over, scripts get ripped apart, egos collide, and truth spills out live in front of millions. Tonight, we're diving into the moments when WWE wrestlers went off script and got way too real, moments that shook locker rooms, divided fans, and still spark debate today. It always starts the same way. The music hits, the crowd reacts, the camera zooms in, and everything feels controlled. But then something changes. A pause that lasts too long. A sentence that wasn't clear. A tone that suddenly feels personal. And just like that, the illusion cracks. Let's talk about CM Punk. Because when people talk about too real, his name doesn't just come up, it explodes into the conversation. One night, what was supposed to be another promo turned into a verbal grenade. The words weren't polished. They weren't safe. They weren't respectful. They were raw, frustrated, and brutally honest. It wasn't just about storylines anymore, it was about power, favoritism, and feeling unheard. Fans felt like they were watching a man vent years of anger in real time, and that's why the arena buzzed differently. You could hear disbelief mixed with excitement. Some called it legendary. Others called it unprofessional. But no one called it fake. That moment changed how fans looked at promos forever, because it proved that sometimes the most powerful lines aren't written by a creative team, they're ripped straight from the soul. And then there's John Cena. The ultimate professional. The face of the company. The guy trusted with a mic more than almost anyone. But even the most controlled performer can snap, strategically or emotionally. There were moments when his promos went beyond playful trash talk and dipped straight into reality. Lines about work ethic, loyalty, and who really shows up didn't just sound like character dialogue, they sounded like personal judgments. Critics argued he was blurring the line on purpose, using reality to win verbal battles. Supporters said that's exactly what made him elite. When Cena went off script, it wasn't chaos, it was calculated intensity. And that made it even more uncomfortable, because you couldn't tell where the character ended and the man began. Now shift the spotlight to Roman Reigns. Early criticism followed him everywhere. Crowds rejected him loudly, sometimes brutally. And there came moments when his responses felt less like scripted confidence and more like genuine frustration. You could hear it in his voice. See it in his eyes. When he fired back at the noise, it didn't feel rehearsed, it felt human. Those moments divided fans hard. Some respected him for standing his ground. Others felt it exposed cracks in the armor. But looking back, those real reactions became the foundation of his transformation. The criticism wasn't ignored, it was absorbed, reshaped, and eventually weaponized. That's the irony of going off script. Sometimes it hurts you in the moment, but it builds something far bigger later. Then there's Rhea Ripley, and this is where things get intense in a different way. Power, dominance, and presence are expected, but when she crossed into reality, it wasn't loud anger, it was cold confidence. Certain promos hit so personally that fans questioned whether boundaries were crossed. Her words didn't feel like insults written on paper, they felt like challenges aimed directly at perception, criticism, and doubt surrounding women's wrestling. News outlets debated it. Fans argued non-stop. Was it too far, or was it exactly what the division needed? The uncomfortable truth is this: when someone speaks with that much conviction, it forces everyone to pay attention. And attention is dangerous when it's real. And then there's Brock Lesnar. Silence is usually his weapon. That's what makes his off-script moments terrifying. When he breaks character verbally, it doesn't feel like a promo, it feels like a warning. There have been moments where his reactions, his words, even his body language made people question whether things were still part of the show. That unpredictability is why audiences lean forward when he's involved. Because if Brock says something unexpected, you believe it could be real. You believe it could escalate. And that tension? That's something no script can manufacture. Here's the real controversy no one likes to admit. WWE thrives on control, but its most viral, most talked about moments often come from losing that control for just a few seconds. News outlets jump on it. Social media explodes. Fans pick sides. Some say it's unprofessional. Others say it's art imitating life. The truth sits uncomfortably in the middle. When wrestlers go off script, they gamble. They risk punishment, backlash, and reputation. But they also risk something else, the chance to be remembered forever. Because fans don't replay safe promos. They replay moments that made them feel something real. anger, shock, respect, discomfort. Critics argue that these moments expose cracks in the system, that they reveal backstage politics and unfair power dynamics. Supporters argue they expose humanity, and humanity is what keeps wrestling alive. And the company? The company benefits from the noise, even when it pretends not to. The reason these moments hit so hard is because wrestling lives in the gray area. It's not pure fiction, and it's not pure reality. It's a collision of both. When someone steps outside the script, they pull the audience into that collision, and not everyone is ready for it. Fans would still debate who was right, who went too far, and who should have stayed silent. Because these weren't just promos. They were pressure valves bursting. They were moments where frustration, pride, and truth refused to stay backstage. And that's why these moments never die. They get replayed, reanalyzed, criticized, defended, and mythologized. Because when WWE gets too real, it stops being just a show. It becomes a mirror, reflecting ego, struggle, power, and the cost of speaking your truth on the biggest stage in sports entertainment. And that's where this story refuses to end. Because when the lights go down and the cameras stop rolling, the echoes of those unscripted words don't disappear. They linger in locker rooms, in boardrooms, in fan debates that stretch for years. They become whispers about courage and recklessness, about honesty and consequences. Some moments get labeled as legendary, others as mistakes, but all of them share one thing in common: they broke the illusion, even if only for a heartbeat. The crowd remembers the feeling more than the words. That sudden realization that this wasn't just a performance anymore. That this was frustration, pride, anger, or truth spilling out with no safety net. And once fans taste that authenticity, scripted perfection never feels the same again. Every promo after that is questioned. Every pause is analyzed. Every intense stare feels like it might explode into something real. Critics will always say those moments damage professionalism. That they blur boundaries that should stay firm. But supporters will argue they are the very reason wrestling survives era after era. Because perfection is forgettable, but imperfection burns itself into memory. A carefully written line fades. A real emotion scars. Backstage, these moments create tension. Trust is tested. Lines are redrawn. Some doors close forever, while others open in ways no one expected. Careers can change in seconds, either elevated to mythic status or buried under controversy. And yet, despite the risks, despite the fines, the warnings, and the consequences, it keeps happening. Because when emotion outweighs instruction, silence becomes impossible. This is the uncomfortable truth of sports entertainment. The company can control the lights, the music, and the finish, but it can never fully control the human heart standing in the ring. Pressure builds. Expectations crush. And sooner or later, someone decides that saying nothing hurts more than saying too much. These unscripted moments expose the pressure cooker behind the curtain. The expectations to perform perfectly. To smile through criticism. To carry a company's image while carrying personal frustration. When that pressure finally explodes, it doesn't come out polished, it comes out raw, messy, and unforgettable. And maybe that messiness is the most honest part of the entire industry. People argue that these moments create chaos. But chaos has always been part of the magic. Wrestling was never meant to feel sterile. It was meant to feel dangerous, unpredictable, alive. When someone goes off script, the danger returns, not physical danger, but emotional risk. The risk of being misunderstood. The risk of punishment. The risk of being remembered for one sentence instead of an entire career. And yet, fans cling to those moments more than championships, more than win-loss records. Because titles can change hands, but truth hits once and never lets go. A real moment can redefine how someone is seen forever. It can turn criticism into respect, or admiration into controversy. Either way, it forces conversation, and conversation keeps the industry breathing. Behind closed doors, these moments become lessons. Warnings are given. Rules are tightened. Control is reinforced. But control is never absolute. As long as there are microphones, as long as there are live crowds, and as long as there are humans under that spotlight, reality will always find a way to slip through. You can rehearse lines, but you can't rehearse emotion reaching its breaking point. That's why the audience keeps waiting. Not just for matches, not just for surprises, but for that feeling, that sudden electricity when everyone senses the script has been abandoned. When hearts start racing because no one knows what comes next. That uncertainty is rare, and rarity is powerful. In the end, these moments don't weaken wrestling, they remind people why it matters. They remind everyone that this isn't just choreography and dialogue. It's a collision of ambition, pressure, pride, and passion. And when those forces collide without restraint, something real is born.